So I'm going to call the meeting to order, a special work session Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 at 1 p.m.
So Tom is joining. He's got to reconnect and try calling Ann. She didn't answer. So.
Okay, and we just officially had an announcement of where we are, and Tom's here. Okay, so this is a work session. It's in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room, 1415 Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee, Arizona. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Roll call, District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2, we're aware that Supervisor English might be joining us a little bit late. And District 3, Supervisor Judd is here. Members of the public may also attend this meeting via Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app or via phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 291-373-968 pound. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comment will not be taken. We have mostly just our staff that would normally attend a meeting like this, but just for the public record, if you could state who you are, and if you speak, anyone who speaks, state who you are the first time you speak, who you are, and what your office is. And first, Joe, you don't have to do that. We have Mr. Joe Casey with us, Chief Information Officer. He's going to be giving us our presentation, and I believe we're just turning the time over to him.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Joe. It's your turn.
Thank you for having me here. So today we're just going to talk about broadband. I want to provide an update on where we're at throughout the process. We're not looking for any action per se out of this meeting, but just to inform you of where we're at and where we're going. So beginning of this fiscal year, in Q1, we plan to release a RFI, a request for information, to go out to the various ISPs that may be interested in coming into Cochise County or are already in Cochise County to provide internet, or to provide broadband more specifically. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to get a lot more information on some of the specific priority areas that we're going to discuss today, and I'll show you all those as we go through the briefing, and actually get some defined numbers so that when the grants come out in the very near future, the ISPs and ourselves will be ready to move forward with those. So the plan is to move forward with a public-private partnership, and essentially what we mean by that is that the ISP, or the internet service provider, they're going to be the ones that still own the network. The county is not trying to get into the ISP game and own these networks. However, we want to help support and get broadband to all of our citizens. So this is the most efficient way that we found to make this happen in our environment.
Madam Chair, if I may, it looks like Supervisor English has joined the meeting.
Okay, Supervisor English is now with us.
So, like I said, it's to prepare for these upcoming grant opportunities, and the big one that everybody's waiting on is the BEAD money, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. The federal government has almost $42.5 billion that's going to be available for the states for that. So that money is going to be going down to the states and administrated from the state level down to counties, cities, so on and so forth. So that money is expected to come out the calendar year of 2024, the first quarter. And so we want to make sure we have everything in line and ready to go when that money is released. We will be requesting ARPA funds to help match those grants if a match is required. Right now, we have about $2 million set aside for that purpose.
Okay.
So as we go through the slides here, the definitions of what served, underserved, and unserved are, this is what they're based off of. And we use these as the guidelines because the NOFO for the BEAD money uses these as what the guidelines are. The FCC states it a little bit different at this time, but they're planning to update it to these numbers. And so the download speeds is 100 megabits and upload is 20 to be considered served. To be considered underserved, it's less than 100 and less than 100, that's 100 down and 20 up. And what I mean by upload and download, just so I'm clear, download is when you're trying to go get information from the internet and you're bringing it down to your computer. If you're taking information from your computer and putting it up on the internet, that's upload speeds. So that's the differences between the two. And then unserved would be less than 25 megs and less than 3 megs up. And the information that we're about to go over here, we pulled this from the FCC data. And we did the broadband feasibility study with Finley last year. And so we used information from there along with the FCC and Finley are the two main data sources that we're using here.
What's an example of unserved? Would someone who might still be on a dial-up, if there even thing exists, would that be unserved?
Yes.
I remember that was very slow.
So yes, dial-up would fall under that unserved category.
Sometimes satellite connections aren't very good either.
Correct. So with this does not include the satellite connections as well. So you have your fiber connections, which generally those are normally served. You have your fixed wireless, and most of those were considered unserved before or underserved, but they have a newer technology now that's making it so those are also in the served range.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And then a lot of this mapping, the GIS team, Terry and Michael, they put these maps together and helped consolidate all this data for me. So we're going to start off and we're going to go down, and these are in order of population. So if we just kind of look at this first map, I'll explain what the legend is, and then the rest of the maps will be quite a bit quicker. But so Hereford, there's 2,752 people that are underserved or unserved at this time. The area up there that's yellow, that is the RDOF reverse auction. That was Resound Networks. They received the money for that, and it's recently been released to them, and they have 5 years to get broadband to those areas. There's a lot of Cochise County that falls under that. So even though in these maps they're showing yellow, that doesn't mean that they're served at this point, but they have the funding to be served within the next 5 years. So we can include that for future grant funds. So the main area we're looking at is the area in red. That is the unserved or underserved area throughout this presentation. And then on the bottom left corner there, you see those black diamonds. That's where an ISP is already providing service, or they're rolling out a service right now for that area. The dark blue and green area are considered served or funded as well. That is not part of the RDOF though.
So if I live in that yellow area and I really want to get service, I have to wait for this company to build out that broadband.
Correct. Or if there's another ISP that wants to expend their funds to get into that area.
But
they can do so.
They're not going to qualify for any of the funding that's coming out because it was awarded to another company.
Correct. Okay, correct. And then the section there that doesn't have coloring on it has the, still the map in the background. That's gaps between the data, between the FCC data and the Finley data, and the census tracts as well. So it's an area that we need to do a little bit more research on, but it is most likely a zero population area. And that's the other color we have up there is that light blue area where it's zero population. So it's most likely to become a light blue, but we haven't completed that piece of research yet to finalize it. Any questions on that one? And if you take a look on the top left corner, it'll be the same thing through all these as well. That's Cochise County, and that's just a small call out to show you where within Cochise County we're referring to.
Mr. Casey, I have a question. Tom Crosby, District 1. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your continued professional oversight of our IT department. What in the previous slide, what was the yellowish tan square island in the middle of Hereford there? You might have said what it was, but I missed it.
That is the yellow. That's the RDOF reverse auction funding that has been funded to Resound Networks. And so even though it's yellow, the technology that's being used by Resound is going to be a fixed wireless. And so the chances are they'll actually be able to provide internet to a lot of these areas as well that are outside of the area that are funded. But for grant purposes, we are able to go get money for those areas because it's unknown to us until they expand into those areas.
Okay, I got another question, which is, does this have anything to do with cell phone coverage, which I hear complaints about from constituents from time to time, or is that completely different, or how is it associated if it is?
You broke up for a moment there, but I think you asked if it's cell coverage.
Here, what does this have to do, if anything, with cell phone coverage, which I hear complaints about from constituents from time to time?
This doesn't impact the cell coverage. The only way it would is by getting internet to areas where it's not, which would make it more feasible for a cell provider to try to put a tower in place.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't impact that. Okay, Whetstone, there's a little bit over 2,500 people that are underserved there. And I could go as fast or as slow as you want to these maps if you want time to take a look at them.
It's good enough. You're doing it right.
Tombstone, so there's a big portion of Tombstone that does not have coverage, and you see there's a lot of that area as well that is going to be covered by RDOF in addition to this area that we're trying to get some coverage for. Next one is Palominas. Just over 1,000 people without coverage there. Pomerine, going a little bit further north, you have 1,015 people that are unserved or underserved there. Bisbee surrounding area. So the core of Bisbee is considered served, but there's some surrounding areas that does not have appropriate coverage. So those are the areas in red there. North Fort Grant Road, you're looking at 357 people. And then up at the border between Cochise County and Graham, there's a few areas there as well for 340 people. And then Huachuca City, this one's a little bit unique. If you see the area with the black diamond there, Cox is currently expanding into that section. They are expected to release service to the first homes in July and then expand it to the rest of it. Once Cox finishes their expansion, there's going to be about 278 people that still do not have coverage through Huachuca City. But that'll be it'll definitely hit a big chunk of them right there, 1,700 now. Benson and St. David, a few places there for 214 people. And then around Douglas, so Douglas had received a grant last year from the state. Cox is still working with them to get the money to start that project. But these are other areas outside of that project that are not expected to have service. North Ocotillo Road, 121 people. I think we're getting close to the end here. And then Dragoon with 101 people without service. And then the last one is Parker Canyon Lake area. I believe that's the last one. And then one other category in there, you see that partially served. There's one area that has only partially served that we called out, and that's in Sierra Vista, where they have enough download, but they don't have sufficient upload. So they're considered partially served. So quick and easy. Any questions, comments, concerns on broadband?
I just wanted to check that Cox was who pulled out a few years ago, right, from Huachuca City.
Correct.
And then they were just able to go back in and kind of pick up where they left off.
Yeah.
Okay.
They changed the infrastructure. Before there was old copper in there, and now they're installing fiber.
That's helpful. So our internet providers are going to be the ones that normally would. Cox may expand and takes over Valley Telecom obviously is part of the picture. Okay.
So yeah, when we go out when we release the RFI, we expect that definitely those two players to come back on a lot of these areas, but a lot of others as well that may want to enter the market. And what we want to do with that one is we'll release these priorities areas, and they can take a look and say, this is what it'll cost for me to provide service to this area. And some providers, it'll make sense for them to do it. Other ones, it won't, because they might not have anything in that area already. And so it'll be a cost game at that point where what's financially feasible for them.
Well, and then we'll just facilitate funding and not necessarily have any responsibility or ownership of anything in their systems, right?
Correct.
Facilitate funding.
So this is all the groundwork, right? So all the feasibility study that we went out to get, and we weren't waiting for anyone. We were getting that feasibility study. That helped us create these maps and locations. And then now, as you said, we're going to go out for an RFI to hopefully get some internet service providers to want to service these areas. So we've identified the underserved areas, go out with an RFI. Hopefully we have internet service providers that want to do something. And so we are all set, ready for once that grant opportunities come.
Exactly. Okay.
So we're now ready. We're not waiting for any kind of additional studies. We're not waiting for anything else. We're just simply waiting for the grants.
Once the RFI, and yes,
You're right.
correct.
And hopefully we get people that want to serve all these underserved areas.
I have a question.
Okay.
I was just in Douglas and talking with the city manager, and they also have a feasibility study out. Have we worked with them to find out what they're doing in this arena? I can't believe that there's only 164 people underserved in the Douglas area.
So it's underserved now versus those places that have already received funding to be served. So there is more that are underserved at this moment. However, those areas have already received the funding, so they wouldn't be available for future grants.
So who received the funding?
So that whole area in yellow
Mhm.
is Resound Networks. They received funding. That's the RDOF funding. They received that, and they have about 4.5 years now to complete all the areas they've received funding for. And then also
Repeat that again. What's the name of that? Is it a company? Or
it's a company called
consortium?
Resound Networks. They're out of Texas.
And we never heard of, so they don't do anything here now.
Not yet, no.
But they're the ones that won the bid for the funding.
Yeah, it's a reverse auction bid from the FCC. Yes.
So because they won the bid and they have this timeline that was created for 4.5 years, and we can't go out and get additional funding to serve these areas unless they fail or don't provide any service. So we have to wait
The 4.5 years.
for 4.5 years. It's frustrating, but we can only do what we can, and we can't add these areas because we'd fall out of any kind of grant possibility.
Is there any way we could get an update from their company?
So I talked to them a few months ago when they finally had the money released, because the FCC had not released the money to them for a while, and they just released it earlier this year. And they were saying that we were near the top of their stack of priorities to get to, but they have multiple states that they're expanding into, but Cochise County was near the top of their stack of priorities.
That's easy to say if you're them.
So basically we're in a wait and see.
For that piece of it, yes. But so
But there's a little tiny piece of it left, and it's basically not very many people.
correct. In that specific one, but Cox did receive money last year from the state, so Douglas has that piece as well. And they're waiting on the money to be released from the state so they can start the project in Douglas, which is going to be fiber to the home throughout Douglas and to the Cochise College area, which should hit a good portion of the population in Douglas.
Is that also shown in yellow?
No, it's not. I don't have the layout of
Okay,
that on here.
so it would fit it somewhere in the red part then probably.
It would,
Because yellow is
There's only-
reserved
there's
by
only
the
one-
RDOF people.
There's only one map in Douglas.
so I believe it'd be that the darker blue area over Douglas itself.
Oh, okay, all right. That looks right.
But
It would be interesting to know what they're working on.
yeah, but if we are able to get and partner with internet service providers to provide for the red areas, that we have the underserved, and if they're already in the areas, the hope would be that, let's say, in 4.5 years, if Resound Network doesn't provide any services, at least we have someone in the area that maybe they can expand into those areas, and we get additional funding. But the problem is we have to wait 4.5 years.
Well, not necessarily, because they could still take it, it might make business sense to them once they're in the area to continue to expand. Even if Resound, still comes in, then you have competition.
Yeah.
So it could still be beneficial either way.
That's good to know. We would be able to receive funding for them to expand, but they may financially it may be beneficial for them. They would then. Okay.
Well, our match money has to be spent by 26.
Yes, the end of 2026.
And so we can't wait the 4 years. We've got to
So
move ahead if we're going to help anyone.
Yes. Which is why we're going after these areas in red now.
So what's the time frame on that? How long do you go out for bid and the
So-
award time and actual working with the company? And then how long are we going to give them to complete? Because we've got to spend this money by 26.
So we're going to go out with the request for information over the next few months, and that will give us the information on each of these priority areas. Now that we have it drilled down, that they can focus on, okay, what would it cost for this area? Then the service providers come back and say, okay, it's going to cost me $1 million my own money. I'll need 500,000 of grant funds or whatever it ends up being, and have that breakout. And then when the BEAD grant comes out beginning of calendar year 24, we'll be ready to go with going after those grants and making, getting broadband to these different locations, to these different priorities.
So my mind is like everything's being created shelf ready,
Yes.
as the term goes. So that when these grants go, we're simply filling out information, not pursuing any other information. We already have hopefully an internet service provider. We already have the detailed information that we got from our feasibility study, and we're just putting it together, making submission.
Maybe some fine tuning and then going.
I, for one, was certainly hoping that we could do something that would show an impact certainly before that time frame. But, it's government work, so it takes forever, it seems like, to get anything done.
Well, it's kind of up to them. I'm anxious to see what they'll come up with, our service providers. It's not complicated it was when you were putting it together, and thank you, Terry. It was complicated to get all that information on the maps. But for us now, it's not complicated. But whenever Cox looks at that, or Valley Telecom, they've got to drill down. I mean, do you know what their turnaround time might be when
Not
we
yet.
give them this map?
Not yet. We're working with Finley, the company that did the broadband feasibility study, and they're going to help us draft the RFI to make sure we get all the information where we need to be ready for that BEAD grant.
Okay.
That'll take how many months?
To draft the RFI,
Mhm.
say about a month, and then have it out there for a month or two. But we're still working on exactly what that timeline is. The goal is to have it back by the end of this calendar year, to have that RFI back, so that when the BEAD money is released, we have everything all ready to go.
In their behalf or for their benefit, they've probably already investigated, right? Some of these areas, some of these regions, like Valley Telecom will have looked at what's within their service area and decided. So it may not be as long of a turnaround time as I think it would be.
Yeah, it has
It
had
seems
some service
complicated.
providers provide information saying this is the areas that it would cost and what it would cost for us to do that.
So it might be kind of seamless, actually. When we provide the funding, they'll be like, oh yeah, we're ready for that one. I hope so.
Yeah.
And you stated in your presentation, the BEAD money you anticipate coming out the first quarter of next year.
Correct. That's the anticipation, but it's coming from the federal to the state and then down. So it's kind of on their timeline a little bit. Well, it is on their timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit totally. Well, thank you. That was a really great presentation. Are there any questions from Mr. Crosby?
I have no more questions, but I thank you, Mr. Casey, for your explanations on page 4 and the other pages that you've presented here.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have anything else?
No.
I don't either. Something so complicated and covering the whole county and something so needed, I feel like there should be a bunch of robust discussion, but you did a good job, apparently. That's fine. We are just fine. So
I'm not sure what there is to discuss.
Yeah.
It seems like it's pretty cut and dried of what we can do at this point, which is not much.
it's kind of in someone else's hands. So thank you. Our next meeting will be June 27th at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room. It will be a special board meeting to approve the demands. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting.